Hello, welcome to Revenant Reads. I'm Vin, and this is a monthly reading wrap-up for September of 2025. So this reading wrap-up is coming late in the game. It's been a while since I've made some videos, so as always, I'm playing catch-up. And I have a pretty decent stack here. I read, about 7 books in September, which for me is good. That's a pretty good amount. So all of these books I have spoken of in more detail in what I call Fresh Read Kills videos. So if you want my further thoughts on any of these, please go and check that out. Really what this video is a brief summary of what I read throughout the month. So if you're new to my channel, all of my videos are very informal. So you kind of just get what you get here. So I started off the month, if I remember correctly, the order, with Undaunted Courage by Stephen E. Ambrose, Meriwether, Lewis, Thomas Jefferson, The Opening of the American West. This is one of those books that I have had on my shelf, for ages that I wanted to get to. And I read this finally for quarter 3 of Historathon 2025. Historathon is a year-long event where we read, celebrate, and discuss nonfiction history. And this was a quarter 3 read. Quarter 3 looked at the years 1500 to 1820. And yeah, this was good. I had heard a lot of good things about it, of course, and I wasn't really expecting it to be bad at all. And it's written in such a way that, you can kind of visually put yourself there as Lewis and the Core Discovery expedition is moving across the West. He does a really great job, Ambrose does, of painting the picture. I didn't really expect it to be mostly a biography of Meriwether Lewis. I thought it was just going to be more about the expedition itself, but really it's about him. It's a biography, and I didn't expect the last section of the book to be such a downer. I knew that Meriwether Lewis didn't live to a ripe old age, but I didn't know just how bad it got for him. So yeah, you will not leave with a sense of triumph after reading this. It's a pretty depressing story. In the end it is. But yeah, this is a really good read, Undaunted Courage. I also read, listened to, I did an audiobook for this, Travels with George in Search of Washington and His Legacy by Nathaniel Philbrick. And this is my first Philbrick that I've read. And this is part travelogue and part history. Especially, Philbrick is following the path that Washington took after his inauguration. He basically went on a tour of the country to try and present himself as its new president, to try and unite the various former colonies. And overall, it was a success. And Philbrick follows in his path, talking about what he did and what's there today. And this was a lot of fun. I enjoyed listening to it. You really get a sense of, despite the various faults that Washington certainly had, his attempt to unite the country, and a country that was so diverse in so many ways, is really admirable. And he really did have the country's interest at heart. And that definitely comes across in this. And then I got sick over a weekend, and my wife quarantined me in the room, and I just sat there in my bed and read for about 2.5 days. So I read 2 things related to witchcraft. First, I read Vexed with Devils, Manhood and Witchcraft in Old and New England. This looks at the way that manhood played a role in not just the witchcraft trials, but also in the debates about the witchcraft trials. Basically, the people who were writing openly against these witch hunters, trying to emasculate each other and bring down each other's manhood. And I thought this was really interesting. I do love that cover. It's very much an academic book. It's not really for a general readership. It assumes that you really know these cases already that it's talking about, which I didn't know some of them, so I had to kind of piece together as I was reading exactly what happened. But nevertheless, it definitely opened me up to new avenues as far as thinking about, period witchcraft, especially in the 16th and 17th century. And I followed it up with this, which I kind of wish I read them in reverse order, because this would have filled in some of those gaps that I was missing there. And this is very much for a general readership. This is The Devil Made Me Do It, Crime and Punishment in Early New England by Juliet Haines Mofford. And she uses a lot of primary sources, but she makes it, very, very simple, very entertaining. looking at the different social mores, the different crimes that were on the law books during especially the 1600s, and what would happen if you broke them. And I found that incredibly interesting. And there is, of course, a long section on witchcraft, which was, again, I know about Salem, and I know about a couple others, but it did introduce me to some of the other witchcraft cases that I wasn't familiar with. And at the end, it's talking about things like piracy and those sorts of crimes, and what would happen to some of those pirates when they were caught. So yeah, this was a fun, entertaining book. And then towards the end of the month, I read this. Alec Ryrie, and I don't know if I'm saying that right still, Unbelievers, An Emotional History of Doubt. And he is looking at the development, he's trying to kind of correct an incorrect narrative that is readily accepted. Essentially things are told as far as the history of secularism, that in the Middle Ages, people were devout and pious, and then the Enlightenment comes along. Enlightenment philosophers kind of lay out a new way of thinking, and then that spreads and secularism spreads. And he's saying that, no, it's not really what happened. And he goes through evidence of a more emotional history of doubt and intrinsic doubt that people had. He carefully kind of separates doubt from defiance. And he looks at, from the late Middle Ages through Protestantism, how doubt sort of increased more and more and also gained more acceptance. And that is what led to the Enlightenment philosophers, basically solidifying somehow in a more reasoned way that doubt that people were feeling intrinsically. And he has a really interesting kind of thesis at the end about why secularism has probably spread so much in the last half century as a result of World War II. And he also has an interesting, I think, warning in a lot of ways that is playing out. And if you want more on that, you can check out my Fresh Red Kills video on it. But I would highly recommend this. I like this a lot. I also went through Spook. Science Tackles the Afterlife by Mary Roach. This is my second Mary Roach book. This is another one that had been on my shelves for years, and I'm finally getting to. And she is looking at all the different ways that science has tried to prove that there is life after death. From reincarnation and, doctors in India trying to find proof, to 19th century spiritualists, to people trying to weigh souls when the body dies, to mediums and psychics and all sorts of things like that, ghost hunters. So she runs the gamut, and for me it kind of got more and more entertaining as it went. Fun stories, and she is kind of going around trying to talk to people and meet people, and has some good stories along the way. So this is a fun, light read. I am somebody who I mentioned in my Fresh Red Kills video who, I knew I was an atheist at a pretty young age, but I held on to the belief in ghosts a lot longer. I don't really hold that belief anymore, but I'm still fascinated by ghost stories, and I think they could tell us a lot about ourselves and, our fears and values and things like that, and the way that we view history. So, these kind of old ghost hunting days are something that I can relate to, and, just kind of desperately trying to find some kind of scientific evidence, and unfortunately not really finding much. And lastly, this could be read in like an hour. Tops. This is TCM, Turner Classic Movies, Fright Favorites, Horror Classics to Haunt Your Movie Night by David J. Skal, a horror scholar who I really liked, who passed away, unfortunately, in a car accident a few years ago. And this has got, a bunch of great images. He gives a nice write-up for each of the movies. And he kind of his choices are largely based on the sorts of movies that would go great for a Halloween watch night. So these are not the most important movies in horror history. These are more like, again, revolved around the spirit of that holiday. Because he does also talk in the very beginning about how Hollywood kind of helped to create what we think of as Halloween today. And yeah, this was fun. This is a good time. And yeah, glad I read it. And here we go. I will try and build my pile here. Okay. So, in September of 2025, I read Undaunted Courage, Travels with George, Vexed with Devils, The Devil Made Me Do It, Unbelievers, Spook, and Fright Favorites. If you've read any of these, love your thoughts. And as always, thank you, BookTube.